it's basically October at this point, Lisa, right? If someone's saying, hey, I'm thinking about next year, I'm getting in front of them now. If someone's saying, I'm thinking about the spring, I'm meeting them now, because if you're not getting educated about local and national real estate market conditions, news cycles, and everything going on in the economy, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole, here with Lisa Chinatti, the baddest bitch in real estate. She's already giving me a hard time before we even get on the pod. And no Byron today. Hope Byron makes it home safe, in all seriousness, with the hurricane going on. Obviously, a lot of people getting affected by that. So well wishes to everyone there that they can get through this hurricane that's coming up. We're going to talk about housing. So we've got some mixed signals here, Lisa. I know we're seeing all this news that's coming out right now where we saw that earlier in the week, existing home sales could hit historic lows, the lowest levels since 1995. Then you've got Housing Wire reporting that after hitting the second lowest level on record in July, pending sales rose slightly in August. And then we've got some consumer confidence that's falling to the lowest level in 3 years, based on some reporting by CNBC and the board. It's the Consumer Confidence Board of Index slid to 98.7, which is down from 105.6, the biggest 1 month decline in consumer confidence since August of 2021. I'm seeing a lot of mixed signals here in the fall market. While there's a lot of good things to talk about with real estate, the way the market's reacting isn't all one way or the other. It's a lot of uncertainty. So how are you unpacking this for yourself, your team, and anyone that's asking you for advice?
Well, so I think it's a great point. I think to further the uncertainty, I think the interesting thing is, or the mixed messages, if you will, there's mixed messages with each individual market kind of shaking out
Yes.
in different ways itself, right? So when we look at pending home sales, if you will, and how it runs with the average rates over time, what we're seeing is that there's definitely some markets that are holding steady. There are some markets, two markets in particular, that are trending upwards, and then some markets, much like you and I up here in the Northeast, which are trending downward in a
Mm-hmm.
year-over-year kind of scenario. So I think it's super important for everybody to be aware of what's actually happening in your local market isn't indicative of what's happening across the country as a whole. And so, one, you got to separate what's happening in your local market. And a lot of what we're talking about is, and I don't know about you, but we're even seeing different markets shaking out within our market. We're looking at an urban market that's feeling one way and a suburban market that's feeling another way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot of being able to suss out the data, understand what's happening, and design your messaging to be impactful based upon those specifics. Um, Looking at the data, right, I think it's super important to understand that pending home sales in the Northeast were down 2.2% on an annualized basis. The Midwest is down 3.6%. The South down 5.3%, but the West is up 2.7%.
Mm-hmm.
So totally different markets in all of those areas.
Well, and that's a really important point. You can't just follow the national news. You want to understand the national trends and then get really local. You talked about how
Yep.
local you are in the city versus the suburbs. We're seeing the same thing here in Philadelphia, where it's a much different market. Days on market's higher in Philadelphia. Inventory's higher in the city of Philadelphia. Then you get to the collar counties, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, and Delaware, that they border the city. You're
Yep.
seeing inventory dropping. You're seeing time on markets lower. You're seeing higher list to sales price ratios. And that's the stuff you've got to know as an agent. We talked about this last week. If you don't have deep knowledge on your local market, and there's places, I'm sure, that, and I'd imagine you probably have the same thing happening in your market, Lisa, where you're on the other side of the street and the prices adjust. I mean, that happens all the time. And it could be because of a school district or a county boundary. It could be because they back up to like a train line or a park or something like that. And there's some neighborhoods that just sell for more, and there's no
Yep.
reason behind it, but you've got to know that stuff and be able to communicate it. What you're talking about, there's some good data behind this here. The KB Homes Chief Operating Officer Robert McGibney This was on Resiclub. Lance Lambert did a nice job reporting this. They had their earnings call on Tuesday, and they are cutting home prices in Austin, San Antonio, Orlando, and Jacksonville. Not surprising, the geographic location of these. And they're talking about that active inventory is rising, and that's a big competitor for them now. And in markets where that's happened, I know in the past, this has been the case where we work, that you can sometimes get a better price on a gently used property than the sexy new construction home that you're designing yourself. So that's local market data you've got to have there. And that's the kind of thing you need to know in the current market. So what do you recommend for agents to get clear on this stuff? I mean, because a lot of people, in this industry, it's very unfortunate that a lot of people that they get the bare minimum education and then they don't continue to study. And the people with deep knowledge that can actually go over these things are the ones that can really stand out in this kind of market and help their clients navigate it. So what do you recommend for agents to broaden their local market knowledge? What would you suggest?
Well, I think the first thing, and this is the most important, and where I often, and I'm going to guess you see the same mistake that I do, which is that we don't dedicate the time. Every agent should have a minimum of 1 hour a week, and that's like the bare minimum, where the time is blocked to actually spend doing that market research. Up here, for me, I'm like, even if you just spend an hour a week looking at the data that's contained within our local MLSs, most agents can find enough information to give themselves a foothold. Being able to navigate it, use the tools section and run the reports from within there, absolutely bare minimum. But I think going a step further, agents should be reading the same stuff that you and I read. And I know I spend 15 minutes every single morning. It's
Hmm.
part of my morning routine. And it's just kind of looking at the news headlines and picking out which ones are going to give me the information to make me most knowledgeable. I don't know that there's like a set resource. Like Resiclub is great, Housing Wire, BAM
Hmm.
obviously is one of the best, but most agents just don't block the time into their calendar. And if it's not blocked, it doesn't happen. There's so many other things that get prioritized over that, but putting in the time, number one.
Tom Ferry put out a tweet, and then it was on Instagram that said, "You don't have a time management problem; you got a prioritization
Prior.
problem." And
Yep.
this is, you think about financial advisors. We talk about accountants, attorneys, doctors, even, right? And this is where agents, they often get a bad rap because they don't put in the time to thoroughly understand everything. I had an orthodontist consultation with my son this week, right? And the amount of knowledge that was given to me in 10 minutes, I'm like, all right, sounds great, right? And I mean, I'm a very, I would say I'm an easy sell in the medical field just because I don't know what I don't know. But when someone can break it down for you simply in terms you can understand, and that's not doing this once, that's not listening to one of these knowledge brokers episodes. I mean, this is a commitment in your calendar to do that. You're talking about your morning routine. You want to
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on in the news. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and they were part of a sales management team at an organization. And the comment was, "Hey, did you see what happened with rates?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then they made some excuse that my morning's not the same as theirs. And I said, "This happened yesterday. I mean, you got to know this stuff like in the minute. Like that's just how it is." So I
Yep.
love that you're looking at things daily, you know, and it is a time blocking thing. And then eventually it becomes routine and you're just going there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really good advice. What I did want to hit on here, I want to get your reaction to this, Lisa, that yesterday, uh, there was a question about how what's happening with housing inventory, what's happening with mortgage rates. Mortgage rate locks are up 68% from a month ago, and home tours are also on the rise. Redfin reported that that we're seeing demand pick up and that buyers are coming back to the market. They analyzed all this mortgage rate lock-in data. And then the Mortgage Bankers Association also reported that the national median mortgage payment for applicants fell by 5.2% between July and August. So we're seeing these things start to matriculate here into the marketplace. A lot of people were talking about like a mini run in the fall. I don't see that happening so far through September. Do you think it's going to change in October, November, and maybe the beginning of December? What's your reaction to this data and that we're seeing showings increase, rate locks increase? What do you think about all this?
Well, so I think the other important thing to just note within there is what happened this week that a lot of agents weren't prepared for with mortgage rates? They
They went
actually
up.
went up, right? Which was a fascinating thing because I think a lot of agents, I was scrolling Facebook and Instagram this morning, which I don't always do in the morning, but I did. And it was fascinating because I came across two reels put out in the last 2 days by local folks in my actual market, and the reels were talking about how mortgage rates were down. And that was actually factual a week ago and 2 weeks ago, but it's actually not factual data this week. Um, and so, super important to be able to understand that, right? We had a small lull in that. I think we saw a very small uptick in showing activity, but if I'm honest, I think if we looked back historically, we'd find that that same uptick of showing activity happens in a normal market in the fall in the Northeast every single year outside of COVID markets. And it's just that now that school is
Hmm.
solidly in place, people's mindsets have shifted back. I don't think it's being driven by demand in the market. I think it's that we're getting back to a non-COVID market. I can't believe it's 4.5 years later and we're still talking about COVID markets. But I think that that's definitely part of it. I think, we had a call party here at the office last night, and one of the other interesting things that we were talking about is as we were chatting with consumers about refis as part of kind of like lock-in effect stuff that's shaking out, and folks that weren't locked in, having some conversations with consumers who bought in 2022 and 2023 with higher interest rates that, hey,
Hmm.
I think that there's an opportunity to refinance. And a lot of those consumers were still saying the same thing. I'm going to wait for rates to fall even lower. And so it's not just happening with home buyers who we talked about last week, potentially believe that they should be sitting to wait for rates to fall even more, but that same mentality is shaking out in the refinance area as well. So it's interesting, right?
It's very interesting, and there's some projections that were released. I'm going to share this slide with Haley to put up, where mortgage rates are forecasted to go according to, and the Resiclub did a nice job with this. They surveyed Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, Wells Fargo, and Moody's, and everyone is predicting, with the exception of the Mortgage Bankers Association, that we're going to see rates lower than where they are right now throughout the year, and maybe get down into like the mid fives. That's the most aggressive prediction by the end of next year. On the high
Mm-hmm.
end, it's just below 6. And when you look at that, we talked about survive until 25 here before. What I'm pretty clear on is that this is the market that we're in, and you're absolutely right. This is what the fall was like in 2019, right? This is what the fall was like before that, where it was still a market where you could do business. And I'm a
Yep.
believer that it's a 12-month a year market. There just may be less transactions, but there's been December's when I've listed personally 17 properties before. So, I mean, yeah, there's always those people that want to move. And I want to stress that to everybody here. And at the same time, you've got to realize that there's going to be some fluctuation. And if you're not preparing for, all right, it's basically October at this point, Lisa, right? If someone's saying, hey, I'm thinking about next year, I'm getting in front of them now. If someone's saying I'm thinking about the spring, I'm meeting them now, because we had a client. I'm sure this has happened to you many times. We met with them in July. They said maybe at the earliest we're going to move in January of next year. Um, I did not say fluctuation, Lisa. This is the comments that I get here. So you think I'm not going to talk about that on the pod? I got news for you. Um, so I said fluctuation with an L, with a dirty mind. So you're going to be able to recover from this. It's turning red on live stream here. This is
Oh my
fantastic.
God.
So we had a client we met with, and it was Amy from our team, and they said maybe Q1, maybe Q2 of next year. They bought a home a month later. They've
Yep.
listed, they've settled. You want to meet with people when they start talking about it, and when you're coming from the place of, hey, I'm here to help you. I just want to give you some information. This is a big decision. Let's talk about it now, because timing is one of the bigger concerns for consumers. And
Yep.
if no one wants to be planning this stuff at the last minute, running around trying to move. So seeing that you're getting this objection, Lisa, that wouldn't stop me from meeting with somebody. And this is a mistake a lot of agents make. They say, oh, they're 6 months
Correct.
out. And then they don't meet with them. And they bought a home 3 months later. And it's like they told you they wanted to do something. And you are so focused on the bottom of the funnel, instead of trying to help somebody, you just cost yourself a sale and cost the client a great real estate relationship if you're a great agent, which, the people that meet sooner certainly are. So even though these predictions are there, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big second half next year based on these predictions if they come true, you got to be ready to start working with these folks now and just load it up because they're going to do things for their reasons, not yours. And the bigger the funnel, the bigger the business.
Absolutely. One of the fun stats that we've been working on with our management team here, because we are, much like you, a very big online lead gen company, both on the buyer side and the seller side. The interesting thing is one of the stats that the average consumer, despite what they tell you on the phone, despite what they, kind of say in their messaging, will transact within about 88 days of
Mm-hmm.
submitting that first online inquiry, right? So remembering, even if they give an objection, that stat says 88 days and it shakes out year round, because what we'll see is that the number of inquiries being submitted in the fall and winter markets is lower than the number of inquiries being submitted in the spring and summer markets, at least up here in the Northeast, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there is some validity to that. And so to your point, absolutely, taking the objection at face value, but then providing the right education and guidance to help consumers understand all the options and making sure that you're leading with service over sales, not just leaning in when it looks like the consumer is going to transact. 100% agree.
Well, and then you're actually providing real value, right? Because these are big decisions
Right.
that people need to make. So, and that's, to me, that's what the fourth quarter is all about, is that you want to talk to people, start to plan out your business for next year. We're going to get into some business planning, and we are a go for this business planning webinar. I did talk to the Lord here, and we're gonna have that happen in terms of business planning in October, because that's what agents need to be doing right now. You need to think about, all right, I'm here to finish strong, but I've also got to have a plan in place because we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, I call it, for real estate. So, these projections are where they are. I mean, I think that there's a lot of good news on the horizon here. So, what the thing I want to really stress to people, and Jimmy Mackin said this, your boy Jimmy. So he said that if you want to be massively successful in real estate, you got to be talking to people, and in order to do that, you need to leverage conversation starters, right? So anything that you're using as a conversation starter right now that you're coaching your team on, or anyone you run into, because there is a lot of good stuff to talk about, but you can't just like call and be like, hey, are you ready yet? Or, the normal, like the check-in call, horrible call. What conversation starters are you utilizing right now with your team and some of the trainings that you're doing? Because I know you're massively over indexing on training right now.
So love this one. And so, excuse me, I'm going to go back to, it really depends upon a few different factors, right? When was the initial, how did that consumer come into your database, right? How did you connect with that
Mm-hmm.
person? Are they in your sphere? Were they an online lead that you generated? Were they a buyer lead, a seller lead? What's the purpose of the conversation? And I think that there's a couple of different ways to go with each of those. So friends and family sphere, just people where you're keeping conversations alive. There's a lot to ask. And some of my favorite openings are you curious about, have you heard about, and switching those to being more open-ended, not just
Mm-hmm.
yes, nos. There's a lot of stuff that can shake out with respect to rates, right, which are super variable. I think that
Mm-hmm.
from my experience, still talking about the NAR changes while we have adapted to them, consumers who are just entering the market now, they don't know what happened in August. And so being able to help those
That
consumers
is
still have
true.
an understanding is really important. And as much as I say that I'm tired of talking about it, it's still super important, though, to remember that for a consumer who bought their home 3, 5, 7 years ago, and they are just now starting the process of thinking about selling that home and buying a new one, there's a high likelihood that they don't know what shook out with the NAR stuff. So being able to have those conversations with consumers is definitely on my list. There's a lot that we can ask about with just asking where they are. One of the other articles that I know you and I had kind of queued up to chat about this morning is that work from home stuff. Amazon is pulling all of their employees back into in-office work, 2025, if my memory is correct. And that's not just
Yep.
happening at Amazon, it's happening across the board. And so I think that there's some ability to open up conversations with folks about whether that's going to impact them. and just being curious.
Well, I love being curious, right? Genuine curiosity
Hmm.
can often, everyone thinks like these scripts and these dialogues, like these magical words you say, and it's going to hypnotize somebody into buying a home. And that could not be further from the truth. It's genuine curiosity and asking questions that actually mean something to these people. So, hey, Lisa, you and Steve want to move. So, what's important to you about moving to
Yes.
downtown Boston? And then just shut the hell up, stop
Yep.
talking. Right, you're not going to talk them into it, and you've got. And this is the stuff like you really want to practice. Like, I mean, it drives me nuts when you meet with somebody and they're frustrated about their business, and then you ask them how much they're practicing the skills, and then they don't. They're like, I don't need to practice. Well, your results would tell me you do. So it's, I mean, and so, asking those questions and being genuinely curious. You look at this remote work stuff. This is fascinating to me. So the share of remote workers in the U.S. 16 or older who work from home before the pandemic was 5.7%. That
Hmm.
number obviously peaked, but now in 2023, because we only have the year end numbers, it's 13.8%. So it's more than double. And if you don't think that's going to change someone's housing needs, number one, the home office, right? That is such a desirable feature. People used to say, like, I never work from home. And you go into their office, I would go on listing appointments. There's like a stack of papers there. There's dust all over the place. Now these are working offices. And I've always used mine just because of the nature of our business, because we're, you're going on appointments and those sort of things. But this has jumped up substantially. And if you look at the number of remote workers, the number was 9 million in 2019. It's 22.5 million in 2023. So this is very real. And that's going to change. One, they're probably going to care about their home more. They might want a little more elbow room if they're going to be there all the time. Functionality is going to be important. And it also opens up locations for a lot of people, right? Like the commute is a lot different now if you're working. So that's the kind of question that you have to ask. And if you're doing a good job, you talked about your sphere, Lisa, asking that the O in the Ford script. Like, hey, how's the work environment been for you, Lisa? Like, how's it going with Steve? Is he working from home now, or is he, I mean, and obviously having good notes and those sort of things, that's going to change people's mindset a lot. So there's a lot of good stuff here to talk about, but you've got to ask questions. And the more you can determine that, then you meet with someone, you give them some value, you follow up with them, have a professional meeting ready, practice your appointment. You're going to crush. Like this business is not that hard. We had Luke Ackrey in here yesterday. I know he does a lot of work with BAM, and he's done that his Stay Paid podcast. They've had like 400 episodes, and he goes, all these successful entrepreneurs I meet with, they're not that smart. They just know how to implement, and they just follow this. They follow the things that work, and that's really what real estate's all about. So you could listen to the pod here as much as you want. You probably think you're smarter than myself for sure. Maybe Lisa, I don't know, but definitely me. I don't know about Byron. He's got a big ego. It doesn't matter. You got to implement. You got to actually do the things that people are telling you work because we've tested it all.
Yeah, I'm going to go back. The question that you started with, the tell me more about the goals. One of the big things that I've been really working on, we're helping more of our agents start to get into listing stuff, and then while also simultaneously working to increase our listing conversion.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to tag team off of that. That question, the way that you worded that, is super important, because when you really understand somebody's motivation, that's how you overcome every objection that you get throughout the request for the signature, right? And I think often when I see folks kind of floundering to handle objections, it's because they can't pull everything back deep enough to the motivation for why you're there in the first place. Practicing, I'm going to actually give Tom Ferry a shout out. We've been working through Tom's new AI, Tom AI. Have you tried it
Oh
out with your
yeah.
team?
I
We've
I'm
had,
I'm the Tom AI here. No, I'm kidding. So we
okay.
have not tried out Tom AI. That's we haven't gotten there yet. I've heard
So
good things,
we,
actually, in all seriousness.
yeah, so we were using it in the office here. I've kind of got some folks because it's an easy entry into role playing. I'm sure you know when you first meet with somebody and you're like, hey, let's role play that script, and they get all nervous and hot and bothered and they're just not comfortable. One of the things that we're finding actually helps break the ice and get them into it is actually having them do it with the AI back. Now, it doesn't replace like role playing with a real person, don't get me wrong, but it gives some really great coaching tips at the end and gives the agent a score. And so we've been kind of gamifying it a little bit and having some fun with it. So might be worth checking out for anybody who has access to it.
I'll tell you what, we're going to implement that this month because what we found is that you mentioned this NAR stuff, right? And I love that
Yep.
we are just not talking about this anymore because it's already done. Like people are implementing, that's fine. What agents and knowledge brokers really want to focus on is going to be conversion, right? Like how do you like
Hmm.
how strong is your appointment now, all right? Because there's some nuances to the appointment. Think about a listing appointment. You've got to explain how the fees work without losing. Like there's a new objection now. The other agent told me I only have to pay X, right? Like this is the first time there's been a new objection in decades in real estate. Like I want
Yep.
to be very clear. And you're running into that on the purchase side as well. So if you can, we're running appointment tournaments at our office where we're having like a March Madness style bracket for the month of October. And like we're having people like go against like not go against each other. It's obviously a win for everybody if you're practicing, but we're gamifying it as well. And if you can, you incorporate that AI component in there, and there's a lot of ways you can do that, even with like Chat GPT and some other stuff. If you're transcribing like recorded calls and those sort of things, I love that. That's going to be on our agenda in October, Lisa. So thank you for that, and we're going to be implementing like immediately. So awesome stuff. How's the team received it? I'm curious. Like, are they open minded to it? Do they feel like, because some people like if you can't take feedback in this business, you're probably not in the right business. Like you got to have a little bit of a thick skin in real estate. How are your people receiving it so far, coming from an AI bot versus Lisa?
I like I said, I think for those that are brand new to role playing and trying to kind of find their way in, I think it's been a huge win. It does a few things. So you can pick whether the AI is the agent or the consumer. Don't shoot me, Tom, but not you, Tom Ferry. I don't think it's as great when the AI acts as the agent, but I think when you ask it to be the consumer, it does a really good job. And you can set the consumer to be easy, medium, hard. You can also pick the personality type. You can have it be aggressive. You can have it be lighthearted. You can have it be a whole bunch of different things. And at the end, it gives you a score, 0 to 100, and it gives you some really soft coaching points. Hey, here's what you did really well. And here's some things that you should try on your next go round to have better results. And I think when it's not being said, computers don't judge, right? Like I think that that's one of the interesting parts to it. You can do it in your home. Nobody has to hear you. And so it, like I said, my guys that are a little bit hesitant to start role playing with me out on the sales floor will do this and then, send me a screenshot of their report card, if you will. Super fun.
Well, we did something similar. We transcribed successful Zillow calls that turned into closed sales, and then ones that didn't, and
I
we
like
put it
that.
into Chat GPT. And it's funny. It's like they didn't follow the script. Okay, wow, surprise! Like
Yep.
it's some of the stuff, but it's third party validation, and this is a great thing to share with the people listening, because if it works for us as agents, it's going to work for consumers as well. And that third party validation, that can be pretty helpful. So what else we got here, Lisa? I got a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. I did not prep you for these.
Oh boy.
I did want to talk about inventory and the forecast of existing home sales a little bit. I don't know if you got a chance to look at this from that we're seeing sales are expected to pick up. I've seen projections anywhere from 9.8 to 10.9% next year. The chart, BAM did a nice job with this on the article that was dropped on the 23rd. And it looks like instead of that kind of prior forecast of a gradual run, a lot of people are predicting a little bit of a trough here. And then we're going to ramp things back up after the first of the year. Is that what you expect with home sales? Like, do you expect January to be coming out of the gate hot and keep increasing with a bigger second half? What's your prediction?
So I actually do, because I agree. I think this year is going to be one of our lowest in a long time, and I think we could see that nationally this year is even less than last year, which is going to be interesting when all of that data shakes out. And what we know is that the pent up demand is there. I feel it, you feel it, I hear it in conversations. There's a lot of I'm going to wait, right? And that I'm going to wait that means that the thought is there, the desire is there. We just need to get some conditions to kind of align. Do I think that the second half of next year? I don't know. And again, this could be partly a regional thing. I never really expect a huge fourth quarter for us in the Northeast, where we've got snow and ice and all of the other stuff that shakes out up here. Does that necessarily mean that like the South won't? No, I could see like the South being a little bit flip-flopped, right? And maybe being a little bit stronger in the fourth. I don't know. I do see next year being bigger. I would love if that prediction is correct that we finally get back above 5 million annual sales, but that would represent, I mean, we're talking about what, maybe like a 20 to 25% year over year increase, which seems aggressive.
Well, so right now, Fannie Mae, they're forecasting 2024 home sales to reach 4.7 million. So
Oh,
that's a 0.3% decline from last year, and
okay.
that's the lowest level since '95. So if we get to 5.1, I mean
Never mind, it's not that
that's
big
where that
a,
like 10% number comes from, and those are a lot of the projections.
okay.
I see
10%.
10% is doable. I think that could happen for sure. What I'm also clear on, I always look back at history. I think history is very helpful. We talked about this on one of our accountability calls, and I've been selling real estate so long. This predates Lisa Chinatti's career, but coming out of the financial crash in 2008, right? I decided to get engaged in 2008, and then like GM failed the next day. What a horrible decision! Well, it was a great decision, but horrible timing. And so I remember those years, 8, 9, 10, 11, they were pretty rough. But then 2012, like things kind of turned where it wasn't the first half of the year sucked, right? It was kind of that same
Yep.
like grinded out pace. Very similar to what we're dealing with now. I'm a big believer. Like these deals are like dogfights. Like it's a slugfest getting them signed. But then something happened in like July and August, and all of a sudden consumer confidence was back. I remember I was listing expired listings and they were selling right away. And I'm like, whoa, like what happened here? And it was something you had to be in the field to really see. I don't know how to, there's not a lot of like early data on that. This is before Zillow really took off and has all like the dot loop data and everything else. And the second half of 2012, at least in our market in the greater Philadelphia area, I saw home selling quicker. I saw the pace move a little bit. It seemed like the market's kind of aligned. That's kind of what I see happening here. It's going to be the beginning of a, I don't want to say normalization because I'm pretty clear this is like a normal market right now. But the hesitation may get removed from the market a little bit in the second half of next year. So it's all the more reason that, we talked about what, Jimmy Mackin said. You got to be talking to people and
Hmm.
having great conversation starters because if you're not delivering value, they're not going to meet with you. It's really that simple.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree totally. What else you got on your list of
All right. So I
questions?
got 3 questions for you as we wrap up here. So we're in business planning season. We're going to be doing something with BAM. What lead indicator are you focusing on the most with your team right now? What are you going to be pushing them to really like? Because everyone should have like the one number, right? Like the one thing. The Gary Keller book. I'm a big believer in this. You got one thing you want to focus on. What lead? I've got mine, but I want to hear yours first. What lead indicator are you going to
All
focus
day.
on the most with your team?
Conversations. I don't even need to think about it. It's been the single biggest thing. It's driving my inside sales department nuts right now. I
Hmm.
took away all bottom of funnel stuff, and the only thing I care about, conversations. How many conversations are we having?
I
What you
agree with
got?
you. And
Okay.
but you also got to look at the ratios, right? This is where tracking and measuring your data is important because conversion ratios aren't the one number. So to start, you've got to have high volume conversations because if you're not,
Yep.
doesn't matter how good you are at setting an appointment. If you're talking to 5 people a day, you're like, oh, well, this is, I mean, you got more time everyone's got enough time to talk to more than 5 people a day. I did that on my car on the way to the office today, calling my clients in Sphere. So we're just going to cut that out. I agree it's conversations. Then you've got to have enough conversations to determine what the ratios are. So what's your appointment set to conversations ratio? And then we talk about this all the time, right?
Yep.
You know how many people you need to talk to set an appointment. And then that lets you plan your day. So if you're not tracking and measuring those conversations, that's going to be a challenge. But the people that don't have conversations and they're like, oh, I'm great when I get in front of somebody, Lisa. I'm so good when I meet them. Guess what? You're not going to meet enough people. So it's not going to matter anyway. You've got to have conversations to set appointments. I agree with you. And then you've got to also understand what you're like. It starts there. You can't jump right to the
Yep.
appointment. So you got to start at the lead indicator for sure. So that was my first question. My second this was a follow up. What sort of ratio for conversations to appointments set should agents be thinking about as they come up with their business plans for 2025 or just for a strong fourth quarter?
Ah, tricky, tricky. All right. So here's where I go back to not all conversations are the same, right?
Yes.
So understanding like lead sources, understanding, what the purpose of the conversation is. Talking with a past client isn't necessarily always going to result in an appointment right away.
Of course.
Making calls to expireds and FSBOs, kind of different. So I will say my first thing is you got to get a little bit granular and understand what the purpose of those calls are. But my overall that we're kind of aiming for is 10%. And what I'm also going to add is I always encourage folks, if you're brand new to this and you're really just starting out, understand that 5% is a win, right? And like, it's not like beat yourself up. And I'd rather see an agent have a 1% conversation to appointment set rate than give up on having the conversations, right? But where we're kind of aiming for, kind of across everything, 10%. And the number of conversations with each consumer is going to matter as well, right? Because the stat 8 to 12 conversations before you can realistically expect a conversion, and depending on what you define as a conversion. So that's my answer. What's yours?
So I like your target for the average agent listening. They probably don't even know their numbers. I'm just going to put it out there. Most people don't. And it's unfortunate. This is the reality. And I'm a big believer in facing the brutal facts. I'm clear. If you don't know your numbers, you got to start at a 20-to-1 ratio. So that's that 5% number you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You got to expect to talk to 20 people to set one appointment. And then you got to figure out like how many people you got to call, right? So that's like
Yep.
two-way texting, that's a conversation. Two-way emailing, that's a conversation. Like there's got to be some engagement there. So I'm okay with counting that as a conversation because it's real. What we found, we've tracked the data that it's typically 4 to 6 dials per conversation. I don't know what you've seen. That's the range that we usually see. So if you want to set an appointment a day, which that's a great goal for any agent listening. Like if you're overwhelmed with your business plan, just be like, hey, I got to set one new client meeting today. You do that, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else. So that means effectively you got to make somewhere between 80 and 120 dials a day in order to get there if you're at a 5% conversion rate. And I agree with
Yep.
Lisa. You get to 20-to-1, that's a great start. Now you can work that number down with the practice that we talked about, but that's the only way to do it, right? So if you're new to this, you don't know it, or you haven't tracked your numbers and maybe you're a real estate veteran, which is a lot of real estate veterans, think about how do I have 20 conversations a day? I mean, Tom Ferry's always talked about the 5-5-4. I'm a big believer. Just make it 5-5-5. Like don't stop at 14. And you talked about the different buckets of conversation. So I'd be talking to 5 people in your database at your sphere, people you know. Those conversations are very different. 5 people you don't know. And then the follow-ups, which is exactly what you're talking about. You can break it into those 3 buckets. Even just start there because that's kind of that
Yep.
middle ground for what we're talking about. And that becomes your daily discipline. Like just I know you came and talked to our team. You didn't leave the office until you set 2 appointments a day early in your career. I'm a big
Yep.
believer that's a good goal. For someone just getting started, or maybe they haven't made the commitment to having high volume conversations, just start by I got to have X amount of conversations. And then you got to kind of debrief with yourself and work on them. And if you get an objection you can't handle, write it down. Like this is real time work. So I it sounds like we're on the same page here, which is great. Last question I got for you here. What is your practice cadence for skill building that you would recommend to somebody who hasn't done this before or maybe needs to recommit to the new skills needed? Well, they're actually not that new. They're the same skills that were always needed. They're just a little more in the spotlight now in light of what's happened in the business. What would you be practicing? What would be your weekly practice regimen? What's the Lisa Chinatti Mamba mentality for getting up and practicing just like Kobe Bryant did when he was out working all of Team USA on those London Olympics?
So again, stupid simple, 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. If you can start with that, like so doable. You're driving to the office and you pick up the phone and you have a role play buddy. Like that's as stupid simple as I think it needs to be. I did a 5 a.m. call last week. Yes, last week was my week. Kind of talking about, how an hour a day can be absolutely game changing and make you become an expert in something, or 2 hours a day, whatever the number was.
Sure.
But even to start at the basics, 15 minutes a day, like you said, you're making calls while you're in the car, right? It's wasted time. If you can fill it by having a role play buddy and just going through one script, it's game changing. Absolute game changing. Yours?
Well, so I agree with you on using the time in the car. Now, there's something that I want to address something. You ever hear people like, "Oh, I'm in the car, I can't pay attention." Well, I got news for you. If you can't give the script in a car, you're not good enough yet, and you
Yep,
haven't
agree.
mastered it. Like you can't be like, "All right, I got to be focused to make this call." If anyone has been in real estate as long as you and I have, I've closed deals like standing on the beach when my kids are yelling at me. My like they're going ape shits in the room next to me, and I'm like in the powder room trying to talk to somebody on the phone. Like you've got to know what to
Powder
say, and
room.
I, this is real life, right? I mean, you've been this is our old home when our kids were younger, and it was like I'm like, all right, this is the office. I'm just in there like closing
I'm
deals.
not mocking that you went in there. I'm mocking that you called it a powder room.
What was it? A half bath. What do you want me to call it? All right, so it is what it is. It's two for two here. First it was fluctuation, now this. Uh, so you got to know these scripts like in the heat of the
Mhm.
moment because the reason most agents fails, they don't know what to say. You missed something though. Agents have got to be practicing their appointments because the appointment script, especially like now, like I mean, so many people they just we're not meeting with buyers anymore. We're doing the driveway consult. That is a skill. I'm a big believer you should be doing what Lisa's talking about. And then if your appointment, you don't have a good like if you want to be a master at listings, you want to get to mastery level, you should be having about a 70% sign rate. That's something Mike Ferry said. 70% is there for a reason. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I get all of them signed." Well, you're not going on the challenging ones. You're not going on the ones where you're competing, right? I mean, this is real. So that means you're not getting out on like, "Hey, we're interviewing the top 3 agents in the area." Those are
Yep.
challenging appointments. And so I'd be practicing your appointment once a week, whether it's the buyer consult or the listing appointment, whichever one you know needs work and where your business is focusing, in addition to the 15 minutes of role play. So I like
I
your
agree with
daily
that.
discipline there. So many agents that and then they practice and what happens is if you're not practicing weekly, at the beginning when you're trying to ramp up and going on high volume appointments, which is the game, you know, well, you may not be going on enough of them to have to stay sharp, right? It's no different than when a professional athlete gets injured and they do the simulation games. They do like the batting practice or whatever you're going to call it. So I would be practicing the appointment regularly because you don't want to be practicing on paychecks. I agree with the 15 minutes a day of role play. We do that 4 days a week with our team. We encourage everyone to role play their appointments because if you wing it at an appointment, the consumer can see through that pretty clearly.
100%. Well, and to be clear, my role play is like it doesn't have to be a phone call. It can be portions of the appointment. Like
Agreed.
I'm going deep with my folks on let's pick the objections. What are our objections to the signatures right now? Right? Like that's where we need to kind of start to move the needle the most, the fastest, and pick a different thing every week. It could be the marketing part of your listing appointment
Yes.
or buyer appointment, right? It could be the first 5 minutes. That first 5 minutes of a listing appointment often determine whether you're getting that signature at the end or not, right? So chunking it down and picking one 5 minute interval that you just build on, right? It's like building blocks, one after the other, Jenga, right?
Jenga, fun game. And that's a really good point. And I agree with what you're saying that if you're not practicing all these components and you want to stick with one thing, you don't want to be jumping all over the place on a weekly basis. This is a mistake a lot of people make because repetition's going to breed familiarity and it's going to help you have, a certainty in what you're saying, right?
Yep.
So I know both you and I are in the same boat. Someone gives us an objection. I'm like, man, I got this. Like, let's freaking go. And I know exactly how to set it up for him. But that comes with decades, plural, of practice. So if you're bouncing all over the place, you're not going to remember it all. Like you're in order to build habits and disciplines, you've got to do it on repeat. So you want to get really good at one thing and move on to the next. And that's why when I talked about the appointment, like if you're a new agent, I'd be practicing the buyer appointment first, then getting that down, then moving to the listing appointment. We had a good friend of mine come in here. They're a salon owner, and they said you got to sweep the hair before you cut the hair. And I thought that was very good advice. That you can't like get ahead of yourself here, and you want to go in the progression that a lot of people are going to share with you.
Agreed. Anything else to wrap up?
That's a wrap. I hope Byron gets home safe. Hey, Lisa, what are you doing towards the end of October, middle of October? You got any plans? You going to be anywhere?
Um, I do believe I will be flying to Las Vegas with two of my best friends here for Bam Mania.
Bam Mania, right? So it's October 18th. We're going to put all the details in the show here. I know Luke Ackery and I have the same flight. I was actually pretty pumped about that because he's going to be at the
Nice.
mastermind with us, which should be pretty cool. You got Sharon Travaza from Real's going to be there. Ricky Caruth, the broke agent. A lot of good people. Lisa will be there. What's Rob Hahn, the notorious ROB. Love
Yep.
that. A lot of great people there. If you haven't checked it out, there's still tickets left. You can go to bammania.com. You can hang with Lisa and myself. We will be there in person. Mastermind's there for VIP tickets as well. Should be badass. I think this is the first event I've been to all year, legitimately. So
I know
should be
you're
good.
like you've been elusive this year.
I'm not elusive.
I've just been working.
I'm being diligent in my business, Lisa, which
I'm just
maybe a lot of
working.
agents should pay attention. I'm not just working. I got 3 kids that have activities out the ass right now, so we've got that going on as well. So I didn't ship mine off to boarding school like you did, so I have to deal with all that at home. So. Catch you guys next week.
We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. At BAMX, we listen to what real estate professionals want and need. That's why our platform is filled with sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business. And that's why we launched BAMX in a box with templates and scripts done for you, delivered each Friday. The best part? It's not coming from panel pontificators who bought their followers and don't sell any real estate. It's coming from top agents, team leaders, and content creators in the industry. It's education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. And now it includes editable templates and scripts so you can easily deliver that knowledge to your database. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX, into our private Facebook community, content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Use Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.